See, as you are talking about gender, it's like we are talking of everybody. But my argument has been always, you cannot balance where there is no balance. So if men are already up there and women are down here, and you say because of gender, we should all be there, there is no way you can succeed. I don't know how the panelist looks about the terms, how the terms can also be sometimes affecting what you want to achieve. So as a result, we are not seeing women in position of leadership, and that's why they are excluded from negotiation. When people go to conferences, they go according to the portfolio they are having in their specific ministries or in their structures. If women are not there, they cannot be there. And even if you bring them to Copenhagen, when they don't have the information, they are just going for a holiday because they don't have the background and they will not be able to make any input. So it's still a question of back at home as to what we are doing to mainstream and to make sure that women are in position of decision and to be delegates and to be part of the negotiation. And then on the issue of women being seen as victims, sometimes we also make ourselves maybe as victims. I don't like when you talk about women and the other vulnerable group, or women and other disadvantaged group. So that itself for me is a defeating. We cannot always see ourselves as disadvantaged. We cannot see ourselves as, because who is disadvantaging us? We should try to make ourselves part of the solution and not always to be seen as a vulnerable group, as a disadvantaged group. So it's a very serious issue. And then finally is on the issue of women are the ones who are finding solutions to the problems of climate change. You know that climate change, the immediate impact is food insecurity. And it's women who are responsible to feed their families. Now they are the ones who are finding ways of continuing to feed the families. So what is needed here, how can they be empowered so that they can really continue to develop those adaptation measures to climate change? They are the ones who are finding solutions to make sure that there is water within their communities, within their families. So the question now, how do we empower them for them really to be the agents of change when it comes to adaptation as a result of climate change? I don't know whether we have a way forward, how we can really assist women in those areas.
That is the big question here today. Barbara, what do you think? Self-empowerment, are women victimizing themselves by demanding special treatment to the road to Copenhagen?
Oh, you raised, the Minister raised a lot of interesting questions, I think. Can I just start on that one about the gender issue? I think we all believe in women's empowerment. I think we get into the conversation on gender because we're trying to acknowledge that men and women have different needs and different roles, and to understand the both of them. But absolutely accepting what you say about women, that actually the power base in the world is not equal. And therefore, we are trying very hard to empower women so that they can take a more equal place in everything, you know, including these negotiations. Now, then the question comes, well, how do we empower women? Certainly from what I see on the ground, there are only two things that are needed. One is money in your pocket. Because frankly, if you're worrying about how you're going to feed your children at the next meal, you don't feel very empowered. So if you can get women with some economic status, that is enormously empowering. The second one is confidence. Actually, women are often very lacking in confidence because they are so burdened. But, you know, certainly I see in all the places I go to that if women start getting together and they start actually doing something together, they just realise how powerful they are and what they can do. So if you put the two things together, money and confidence, there's no stopping women. But we do have to enable that to happen because women are so burdened, and we have to put the money in, as you've said. We have to work alongside women so they can sometimes form into groups for whatever purpose, whether it's a cooperative or a women's group demanding rights at Copenhagen. But women have to stand together to feel that confidence that they can make the changes, I think.
We have quite a few questions in the room. Please go ahead.
Hi. Is this on? Good morning. Christine Pearson, Free Play Foundation. I'm involved in rural information access, and just speaking to the Minister's point, just want to point out how difficult getting information to women in rural areas is. This information is gender-based. The the most pervasive form of information in rural areas is radio. You have to have money to buy batteries. You have to have money to buy the radio. Women are less likely to have money. The next tool for information access would be the cell phone. The same thing applies there, with women having access to funds to buy cell phones as well as buy airtime. One of our partner organizations did a survey in rural Tanzania last year, and it was astonishing how many women still thought Julius Nyerere was president. The UNHCR did a survey for us 2 years ago in the Somali refugee camps in Kenya and found that only 1 in 500 women had access to radio, and that men were systematically keeping women away from radio because they didn't want them to have information access. And just one final example on climate change is last year I was speaking to a woman farmer in Kenya. I asked her how the rains were. She said, "Oh, the rains are funny." I said, "What do you mean they are funny?" She said, "They come too much when you don't want them, and when you want them to visit, they stay away." And I said, "Well, why do you think that is?" And she said, "It's God's will." So, you know, there's so many cultural and financial barriers to getting basic information to women that, just simply get overlooked.
Mrs. Swaminathan, this is a very important point. Of course, your emphasis has always been on enabling or paying more attention to people rather than technology, but also without technology, you can't really do much advancement in this day and age.
Well, may I first of all, in relation to some of the points made, say, I think Copenhagen or other large international conferences can deal with resource allocation, emission control, and so on. But the basic problem of gender injustice, gender equity, has to be solved at a country level. Of course, international opinion may influence. There is no shortcut there. It has to be, we have to see that the women are socio-politically empowered. India, for example, whatever its deficiencies may be, we have a grassroots democratic structure called panchayat at the village level. Originally, mandatorily, 1/3 of the positions, elected positions, should be women. Now they have increased it to 50%. The constitution amendment is coming. I think that's a very important starting point of women's voice, the voice which was not heard. Voicing the voiceless is our number one problem. So, but what expectations from Copenhagen, I entirely agree. Policies must be engendered, policy must be woman-friendly, and allocations must be also. But coming to technology, I have seen the technological empowerment of right kind of technology. Information communication technology is an exceedingly important one, because that immediately gives you the information on your own entitlements, on your own rights, and so on. So we have now an opportunity, uncommon opportunity in terms of empowerment of people, in terms of knowledge information. The right information must be given. But let me again emphasize that in the larger context of the topic we are discussing is the impact of climate change on poor women. The point I tried to make within urban and rural was, in the case of rural, your livelihoods mainly coming from farming, animal husbandry, and so on. In urban areas, it may be domestic services, particularly people living in slums and so on. We have to ensure that their rights are protected, because it's a very important issue. Domestic everywhere, all over the world, those who are going as domestic, many times migrants from one village to the other and so on. So the policies can be broadly, we must say, all of them, gender justice or women's rights must be the bottom line of all policies. But the way in which that policy is converted into programs and action will vary very much from place to place. And in the case of food security was mentioned, I entirely agree food security is fundamental, and women's roles in food security and water security also, water harvesting and so on. They are the ones which are leaders, because otherwise they have to go long distances to fetch a pail of water. Therefore, they know the importance of rainwater harvesting, how to enlarge their role, how to empower them. And I believe that we must also have it politically at the national level. The political empowerment of women becomes exceedingly important.
Okay, we're getting more questions than answers here. I need to start hearing some answers. We're running out of time. We have 35 minutes before we can make recommendations.
Yep.